Our next guest is a part of possibly the greatest Darren Till face swap yet. Darren Morgan graced the internet and is the man who always has the first question. The inspiration for that masterpiece, MMA media royalty, the man in blue, John Morgan. Welcome back to Submission Radio. I mean, we have to give it to Darren Till on this one, right? What a great face swap that was.
Yeah, it really was, man. Always good to be here with you guys. But yeah, even that one even cracked me up a little bit. I don't know what it was, but it came out just perfect, man. It was well done.
I feel like it's a badge of honor because he's going for like fighters, and then even a member of a media, one of the most prominent media members, on a face on the Mount Rushmore of MMA in John Morgan gets done. So I love it. I have to ask though, man, this whole first question thing, it's become almost a meme in the MMA community for the last 6 months, a year. I have to ask you, man, how do you actually feel about it?
It's funny, man. It's funny. People are like, how did you secure that? Or how did that get done? Like, it literally just got done because I was always at every press conference and the PR team just got tired of waiting. They would say, who has the first question? People would raise their hand and then you'd have to get the microphone to them and pass it around. And so it was just easier. Like the PR team kind of came up to me and it was like, hey, do you just want to start with the microphone in your hand? That way we can, there's not that awkward pause when we start a press conference. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. That makes sense. Let's get this thing going. Because there would just be these weird moments where Dana would be like, who's got the first question? And then everybody sits there and he goes, what? Nobody? Nobody's got a question?
I remember that.
And
that wasn't even that long ago.
It wasn't. And in reality, all it was just taking a little time for PR to get over to us, hand us a microphone, do all that. So finally, and I wish I could remember which PR person came up with it, but they were just like, hey, do you just want to start with the microphone in your hand so we can get that done faster? And I was like, yeah, let's just do that, man. That's easy. And then now I guess it's kind of become a little bit of tradition. And I think Dana's even been having a little bit of fun with it. You notice that some of the past press conferences, instead of saying who's got the first question, he's like, John Morgan, what do you got? So it's been kind of funny. He's been having a little fun with it too. So yeah, it is weird. It's kind of weird, kind of like the whole wearing a blue shirt thing. I just did it for my son and I never thought anybody would notice. You know what I mean? I was just like, hey, this is something for my family. And then it became a thing. So it's funny how things that start out of nothing end up becoming tradition or like you said, memes. And in some ways, it's funny.
Yeah, I guess that's how small our community is, the MMA community. But I think also fans don't understand that. I've never met a media member who's ever had an issue with it. It's not like people are like, oh my God, I wish I could have that first question. Oh, that damn John with his great first questions. It's like, as media members, that's actually what we want, because you're at almost every event. You've got rapport with everybody. You've been covering it for over a decade. So it's like when you ask the first question, you butter people up. You get in nice and smooth. There's been some disastrous first questions with other people try and take the hammer of Thor, and then they try and kick things off, and it's like, oh shit, the rapport just goes downhill. So it's like, it's a good thing when you secure it. I imagine you're aware of that when you're asking that first question. I've heard stories of guys, fighters notorious for not liking doing media, and then you find creative ways to butter them up, and then all of a sudden they open up and you got a great scrum going.
I think my favorite one from that was Crow Cop, man. We had gotten a warning actually when we went to media day, and they were like, hey, just FYI, Crow Cop is in a terrible mood today, so just be ready for that. We're like, oh great, you know what I mean? And so basically, I just started it out with hey, what's the stupidest question somebody's asked you today? And he was like, that one actually, and then he started laughing. Next thing you know, we're having fun. But it is funny because every now and then I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, what's with that softball question? Why are you asking that softball?" Bro, there's a little art form to it, like you said. Hey, hey, buddy, what's going on? How are you doing? Let's get get them kind of in a good mood, and then exactly, and then that's when you hit them with, did you take steroids or not? Tell me. You got to kind of work into it.
There's been some Hall of Fame John Morgan performances, but my favorite one stands out to when Vadum got the boomerang thrown at him by Colby Covington, and he had to do an interview with us every single day that media week, and we already covered it 5 times with him, and we're like, how is John going to be able to take this one and make it interesting? And every time he did, man, I'm serious. It was a real learning experience for myself personally. So I know we all have a ton of respect for you, but let's talk about...
Just quickly, do you remember what John said? He's all like, oh, hey, Vadum, anything funny, interesting happened this morning? He's like, oh yeah, man, I woke up, have breakfast. Oh, no. And then he starts talking about, he's like, I don't want to talk about this. I want to talk about the fight. We're all like, fuck, he's giving us I don't want to talk about this anymore. And then John's like, yeah, I know. How do you concentrate on the fight with something like this happening in the morning? And then Vadum starts talking about it. We're like, yes, we're in the money, John. This is where we wanted to be. I'll never forget it.
It was a
Good time. So you gotta have that little art form. Yeah. Hey, I know you don't want to talk about this. I don't even want to talk about it, but people want to know. So let's just do it.
I'll tell you what, single John Morgan would have been able to say no to. That's all I'm going to say. Because after that Verdun performance, I was like, there is nothing this guy can't do. But let's talk about the fight, because we have ourselves on our hands another fight of the year contender, John. This past weekend at the UFC Apex, you were there live seeing Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier. What a damn classic fight that was. It was unbelievable watching it live on TV. Take us into actually being there and being cage side and being able to see this classic in person.
Well, I hate if that's the reason you booked me for this week, because that's the only one I've missed so far. I was on furlough last week.
All right, that's it. We're gonna have to get Luke Thomas. I'm sorry, Jen.
No, it was weird. This is the first one that out of the pandemic era, I was at all the Florida shows. I've been at all the Vegas shows. But we've had furloughs in our company, Gannett, our parent company, MMA Junkie. And so I've been scheduling my furlough weeks around the events. But there were 4 weeks in a row, and I had to take one. So that's just the way the calendar fell. So it was interesting because I didn't even have to work. So normally if I'm not in the Apex, I'm in the media tent, talking to the winners. So this is the first one that I really just watched as a fan, man. I was sitting in my office and had it up on TV and was watching it there. And it's the first time I've had a chance to watch a broadcast like that in a long time. And it was exciting, man. I enjoyed the whole card, but that main event, it was something special, man. And I do wish I could have been in there. I kind of wanted to go and just be there anyway, but obviously there's kind of limits on the number of people that can be in there right now with all the COVID-19 restrictions, that sort of thing. So I took it in from television, but man, it was such a phenomenal fight, man. It really, really was. As you said, fight of the year contender. I am right now, I think, still sticking with Zhang Weili and Ioane and Jacek as my fight of the year so far. Just the pace in that one went all 5 rounds, where this one kind of tailed off a little bit at the end, although understandably so because it was so high. That one also had a championship on the line, where this one's more of a contender type thing. But nonetheless, phenomenal fight. And man, just credit to Dustin Poirier and credit to Dan Hooker too, man. Guys, I had Dan Hooker taking those first 2 rounds. I'd actually picked him to win this fight, so I felt I was looking like a genius after 10 minutes that I was calling this upset. But Dustin Poirier, man, just gutted it through. Man, pushed the pace, showed his grit, his toughness, kept the pressure on. The big boxing. Obviously had some grappling defense as well, and just did everything he had to do to win the fight. So Poirier, man, cemented his status as a legend. But to me, man, Dan Hooker doesn't fall very far down the list from that performance either, man. That was a great performance. And now, man, you see the images on social media of him coming home and having to social distance from his family. Man, tough spot for him. But yeah, just an amazing fight. I think maybe a future UFC Hall of Fame fight or something like that. But man, these two guys are fantastic talents.
Oh, for sure. If we're playing matchmaker, we were discussing how Dustin's in a funny position because, he already fought Khabib for the title, came up short. So what do you sort of do with a guy like that? Now, a lot of people are hoping maybe it's Tony Ferguson. At least you got a fun action fight. What do you think should be next for Dustin?
Yeah, I think, and he said it, right? He wants to wait a little bit and wait it out. So I think you wait to see what happens. I think if Gaethje finds a way to beat Khabib, that really opens the door for Dustin Poirier to get back in there and get that title shot, right? I mean, they have history together. He holds a victory over him. So that to me is easier than getting a rematch with Khabib right now. You could do it, but it just seems like there's other names out there, and maybe Khabib would do it just because he knows the guy is a class act. Maybe he'd say, yeah, let's run it back. But Tony Ferguson is a nice option as well. Just it's going to depend on how timing works out. The other one that I hold out hope for is, man, I think this would be a great time for a Conor McGregor rematch, right? I mean, those guys have history, and if it turns out that Conor's ready to get back in there, I love that matchup as well. Because like you said, man, there's not a lot of people for Dustin to face. He's already faced the best of the best and beat them. So, I think right now he's probably a big Justin Gaethje fan when he tunes in September, because I think if Gaethje wins, that opens the door for him to get a title shot. If not, you start searching for possibilities. And like I said, I'd like to see that. I mean, I know he's not going to go begging for Conor McGregor, but if Conor's ready to come back, I'd like to see that fight, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting because Daniel Cormier, when he was talking to Ariel Helwani on the DC Helwani show on ESPN, he kind of brought up the fact that the second fight between Poirier and McGregor would be a much better fight today, that it would look a lot different, that, Dustin isn't cutting the same weight and he's bigger and stronger at lightweight. I mean, damn, we saw a lot of damage being taken this past weekend. It was unbelievable to see those two fighters be able to stay in there for 5 rounds and take that kind of damage. Do you think it's a different fight if it happens today?
I do. I really do. And that's why I'm so intrigued to see it. I mean, the stories of Dustin Poirier cutting weight down to 145 pounds behind the scenes were terrible, man. I mean, a guy was eating like 8 almonds and 6 spinach leaves a day or something like that in the end to get down. There's just no way, he was fully himself, and he looks so much better right now in the lightweight division. And at this point, man, he's so much more mature as well. He's improved as a fighter. I'm not saying that, well, he's way better than Conor now or anything like that. I'm not, but I think it's definitely a different fight. To me, I don't look at that old fight and say, I know how this one's going to play out, so I want to see it again. So I'm intrigued by it. I would really, really like to see it.
And also just on McGregor, I mean, apart from retweeting a video of him beating Dustin that someone else posted on Twitter, we had a very quiet Conor McGregor over the weekend. And a lot of people thought, all right, this is Conor's time to go out there, steal some headlines and mention a couple of names, maybe mention the winner or bring up the fact that, he beat Dustin but sort of posted himself in a post. Is this due to the retirement life, or do you think it's due to Conor McGregor respecting what those both guys did in that octagon and wanting them to have, enjoy the headlines and sort of ravel in that fight of the night performance a little bit?
Yeah, Dennis, why would you expect Conor McGregor to weigh in? The man's retired. Obviously, he's put in the years and years of effort.
His son bakes him a cake, John.
I'm telling you, man. He's collecting his Social Security. No, listen, I like most people, I don't believe that Conor McGregor is permanently retired. I definitely expect him to come back. So I was a little bit surprised. The only thing I could think is that maybe he's just kind of, keeping it in his back pocket a little bit, trying to let that retirement breathe a little bit longer. So maybe the UFC gets in a position where, they feel like they need him. They need that revenue on the table. I mean, there's no question whenever Conor comes back and against whoever it is, it'll be a huge fight. I mean, the man just commands that kind of attention. So, I think it's probably a bit of a negotiation tactic. Let me stay silent right now. Let me hear people calling my name. I can't say I'm retired and then start making challenges. I think what he's got to do is kind of wait. And I think the UFC is going to be in a position to revisit some of these strained relationships once we get through this Fight Island thing. I mean, that's kind of been my point that I've believed all the way along is not that UFC President Dana White is not open to having these conversations and these negotiations. He's just not open to having them right now, man. I mean, you've seen it in press conference where he's saying, man, this has been the most stressful thing we've ever done. We'd figure everything out, and then the next day it's all wrong, and we got to figure it out again. And so, I think once we get through this Fight Island stretch and then come back here to Vegas and we get into August, and now we've got routine, and now hopefully we got routine. I don't know if you guys have seen the news here, but it's not great in Nevada right now. The numbers are going up. So hopefully we don't regress in any way. But, I think once the things are kind of on track, I think then Dana can go back and start revisiting the John Jones discussion. If the Jorge Masvidal discussion is still out there, having that, and even the Conor McGregor one as well.
Jones vs. Tyson.
Yeah, a lot of great names. Yeah, California, it looks like it's shut down, John. So it's crazy times in America. Just quickly, before we move off this fight, Dan Hooker. You've known the guy for a long time. He obviously puts on amazing fights. People saying Hooker fell to 2 possibly, or Hooker Oliveira. What's a fight that you think makes sense for Dan next?
I like Hooker Oliveira, man. I think that's the one that makes some sense. Oliveira needs a big name opponent, but I think it's all going to boil down to timing as well. I mean, Dan has been through a couple of wars back to back, right? And I think he probably wants a little time away as well. So I think we're talking at least end of year. I don't know if Oliveira wants to wait that long, but that'd be a good matchup for him. So that's the one that stands out to me right now. But at the end of the day, it's just going to depend on when Dan's ready to get back in there.
Just before we move off this past weekend, obviously we've got to mention Mike Perry and his girlfriend who did the corner duties successfully, and in a funny way, having his girlfriend in his corner kind of added to the Mike Perry experience that people kind of always tune in for. Robert Whittaker the other day told us that Mike Perry to him is an enigma. He's always trying to figure him out. But good for Mike Perry, man. He was able to break a losing skid and get a win over Gall and actually put on a pretty good performance. So what would you say is next for him, especially in light of him talking about, fighting Darren Till one day, maybe moving up to middleweight? Jesus, what an ultimate fighter season that would be. People would be killing themselves just to be on Team Perry. But do you think he'd have a chance moving up? What do you think is next for the man?
That would be absolutely amazing. I haven't even thought about that as an Ultimate Fighter season, but that would be fantastic. Yeah, no, listen, I don't know how you don't like Mike Perry, or at least interested in him. I know he said some things and done some things that are pretty controversial, Tom. Some of his comments on race are a little tough to swallow, especially right now, in times we're living right now. But as a fighter and just as an entertainer in the cage, man, the guy is super entertaining. And what a unique situation he entered. I mean, in a weird way, I think like he likes the calmness in the corner. He always talks about how stressful it is when your coaches are yelling at you and they're trying to tell you to do things, and it's difficult for you to do that. I mean, maybe they're relaxing, with just his girlfriend, putting the ice on his back and hand him water is what he needs. But I do think it's dangerous to think that he could prepare for every fight that way. I like the idea. He's talking about working with Yoel Romero. Man, I love the idea of him, heading down to American Top Team and setting up shop there. I mean, I think they could improve, and then if he wants to have his corners with just his girlfriend, then he can do that. But I think Mike Perry is a fun fighter to watch, and I think him and Till got to find a way to get it done at some point. I don't know, how that's going to play out with what's on the table right now, but if he moved up to middleweight. Obviously he's not a huge guy, but he wouldn't have to cut weight either. We just got through talking about, the way Dustin Poirier responded to moving up a division, and man, Mike Perry on fight week, he's as entertaining as he is. He's another one that you can tell is hurting bad from the weight cut. So, maybe not having to drain himself would help himself as well. So, is Mike Perry ever going to be a UFC champion? Probably not. But can he put on some fun, entertaining fights, and can he give us some crazy interviews and some one-liners along the way? Yeah, absolutely. So, sign me up for more Mike Perry.
Oh, yeah. So many great matchups for the guy. And he deserves some kind of interesting setup later on in the Fight Pass network. You got to come up with the Mike Perry show. But probably censor it before you put it out just to make sure it's all kosher before it goes out to the people. But let's quickly...
Don't do it live. Don't do it live.
We're alive, brother. But let's quickly talk about the Ultimate Fighter, because we mentioned it before with this Mike Perry, Darren Till season, which is one of those things where it's like, why not just do it? Because it would make crazy ratings. And
the Ultimate Fighter, Raw Dog.
Yeah, the Raw Dog edition. But Joe Rogan came out, threw out some info recently about Adesanya and Paulo Costa being the coaches of the new season of The Ultimate Fighter. And Israel was on this show recently and said he didn't have any interest in doing the show. And as we know, would push back the fight quite some time. Do you think it's just rumors, or could it actually happen?
It sounds like that's what they're working for behind the scenes, but yeah, I mean, it's just taking so long to get everything done and everything announced. I mean, I like the idea of it. I mean, you talk about, tension. I mean, Israel is obviously going to do his best to just mess with Paulo at every opportunity, man. And Paulo does not have a great temper, it doesn't seem, or control of his temper anyway. So I would love to see it play out. I mean, listen, I know, a lot of people said, I could do away with the Ultimate Fighter. It's not, it's tired. And in a lot of ways it is. But that the extended coaches drama, I think, is almost as entertaining as the prospects itself, especially when they're, real rivalries and real big matchups like that. So if they're going to do it, and I mean, they seem hell bent on doing it, Dana White saying it's coming back, I don't know that you could do much better right now than those two, unless you were going to wait for Till to get done, and then you're going to do Till and Mike Perry, because that would be pretty fun.
Winston, the Submission Radio News Dog, loving the idea of that season. Let me just quickly ask you, though, a lot of people sort of saying you have a champion in Israel Adesanya who wants to stay active, maybe one of the only UFC champions that wants to fight, 3 or 4 times in a year, which is such a rarity these days. You put him on a show like The Ultimate Fighter, you at least take off one fight this year that could happen. And there's a stacked division with so many great possibilities. Do you think ultimately it could be a mistake that the UFC shelves this guy while they film this show and delays this sort of great legacy that Israel's trying to build?
Man, if I thought there were a lot of fights we needed to see right now, like there were several contenders with their hand in the air that were clearly right there, then I might say, yeah. I mean, right now we know there's one fight to make, and that's the fight. I think it all, again, it boils down to how long it's going to take. I mean, how long are they going to hold it? How long are they going to push it back? Because that does get to be an interesting question, especially right now when you're trying to put on as many fights as you can. But obviously, both those guys have to fight internationally, I would think. I mean, that's the other thing is really predicting the future right now is so hard. Like understanding, like, yeah, man, it'd be great. Adesanya and Costa, man, we want to see this fight, but that would have to be on Fight Island, right? Like it's going to have to be in Abu Dhabi, I think. I don't think we can have it here in Vegas. I don't know that for a fact, but the regulations and stuff keep changing. So that's another thing is, when is there another series of Fight Island dates? It looks like maybe in September, I'm imagining on the Khabib fight, but are you going to put those two on a pay-per-view with Khabib, or you already know the Khabib fight with Gaethje is going to sell on its own? So do you need to put that middleweight title fight on there as well, or do you want to put it somewhere else? So man, there's all these balances back and forth. So yeah, on a normal circumstance, I might say, oh man, you're going to put these guys on the shelf. It's not worth it. Here, though, I don't know if that's the case, because I think there's only kind of limited windows and limited opportunities that those two can fight.
Man, What an interesting time, especially as we're around the corner with Fight Island. We'll let you go in a second, John, but we got to ask, what are you expecting from this Fight Island, especially as I guess you'll be leaving very, very soon for it, and I believe the UFC are actually going to be organizing some of the flights. There's like the hub cities, and you're going to be jumping on the plane. They're paying for that flight. This is such unprecedented times. What do you think about, I guess the UFC's efforts, even just to like get the media there and, get the fighters there, and the way they've been organizing the transport and everything?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, for instance, like the security thing of having basically. So what we do is on Thursday, I'll take a COVID test, and then as long as that's negative, Friday I can get on the plane. It is a charter plane to get there that the UFC has arranged. That in itself was interesting. We had to talk to our bosses at USA Today and the Gannett Ethics Committee. I mean, this went all the way up to high level people because we're not allowed to take travel allowances from the UFC. So we had to actually speak to them about, okay, look, what we need to do is figure out what the price would be, and you invoice us and we pay you because we can't accept a flight. But because originally we tried to fly commercially and just say, hey, we'll meet you over there, and say, no, listen, we don't want you flying commercially because now we don't know who you're coming in contact with while you're getting over here. If we know that you're tested and you're secured and you're all together, then we're bringing you into the safety zone in Abu Dhabi, knowing that you've already been tested and that you're negative. Then you get tested again once you're there. And I don't know exactly how many times we're going to be tested, but I was told to just be prepared to be tested a lot and, as much as every day. So, it is what it is. We kind of got it down at this point. So the whole thing's unique. I mean, even just getting the arrangements handled and doing it in a way that, didn't upset our company ethics was unique to do. But I'm anxious to see it. It's going to be weird because all the fights are very, very early in the morning there, right? Because they're going to be built around U.S. prime time. So the fights, I think, start at like the prelims kick off at like 2 a.m. in the morning and wrap up around like 6, 7 a.m. So it's going to be unique to see how that schedule is. The weather there is obviously it's incredibly hot and humid, man. I mean, the last time we went, it was brutal. But I was looking the other day. I think it was sunrise at like 5:30 a.m. and it was like 85 degrees, but with like 80% humidity. So the feels like temperature was like 110. It's just crazy. So the whole situation is going to be interesting. But yeah, man, I'm anxious. In the same way I was about getting to Florida, and seeing how at this point, to me, the UFC has proven their commitment to doing this safely. I mean, from everything I saw in Florida, from everything I've seen in Vegas, it's clear they're taking it, very, very seriously and following steps. And Vegas was a little bit more strict than Florida was, and they fine-tuned some things. And I think they'll be fine-tuning things over here in Fight Island as well. So I'm anxious for it, man. I really am. Just to see how the whole thing works, and to see how the safety zone is with just us around, and just to see how the whole thing plays out. And man, there's some great fights on the card too, man. And I'm anxious to starting with that pay-per-view, but all up and down on the 4 cards, man. There's some fun fights, so it's going to be good to see all these kind of international fighters finally getting back to action.
Absolutely. So let's finish with this. You mentioned the fights, Usman Burns, Volkanovski Holloway 2. Amazing fight between Robert Whittaker and Darren Till. You got Jan Aldo. Which fight are you looking forward to most? And as we wrap up, give us your taste of what's to come. Who do you think surprises people and takes the W on Fight Island that people aren't expecting to?
I like Usman and Burns, man. I think that's the one. Man, that's kind of an easy pick in terms of a main event to most be looking forward to. But I'm really excited for that one. Because of the skill level, number one, but just, obviously there's the backstory of them being training partners and being very, very familiar with each other. But the other thing, too, is that, you think about the strengths that Usman has, and being able to take people down, ground and pound them, that sort of thing. I mean, Gilbert Burns has a lot of power, might be able to catch you on the feet, but, world-class jiu-jitsu. So, even if he's on the bottom, I don't think you could just be sitting on top of him and think, okay, I got him right where I want him. I mean, he's incredibly dangerous there. Scrambles, watch your neck in the scrambles and that sort of thing. So I'm excited for that one. With Volkanovski and Holloway, I'm intrigued by that one for a very different reason. Obviously, Volkanovski just looked so good last time out and beating Max Holloway. Can Max Holloway make those adjustments? I mean, phenomenal run that Max Holloway had, or is Volkanovski just a new guy? Because another guy that, man, I enjoyed following his career and his rise up the ranks, and always felt like he was championship caliber, and to come in and do what he's done in the UFC has been incredible. So, intrigued by that one. Intrigued by Whittaker and Till as well. Where's Whittaker's head at? Is he still in this? It seems like the passion is back, but is it? I mean, it's tough. What he's gone through and where he stands at this moment. So that one, I mean, Benavidez versus Figueiredo. I mean, Joseph Benavidez, you talk about a much beloved guy in the industry, you know, and I was talking to the MMA Junkie radio guys earlier today, like, in my heart, man, I mean, who doesn't want to see that guy have, you know, kind of his Michael Bisping moment, right? Where it's later in his career, he's been chasing it forever and ever and ever, and then he finally gets there. How great would that be? But Deiveson Figueiredo, another guy that from the minute he came into the UFC, I said, oh, that guy right there is going to be a champion at some point. He is tough, but he's got to make weight too, man, and you can't miss weight again. So, man, it's just intrigued. Frankie Edgar's back. I mean, Alexander Gustafsson moving up to heavyweight. What does that do for him? I'm excited to see that. So, man, just a lot of great moments going to be packed into these to this 23-day trip, I believe, is what it boils down to for me. So it's going to be a lengthy one in Abu Dhabi.
Well, there you go, guys. The man that taught Crow Cop how to smile, and how can you blame him? You can follow all his great work across all 23 of those days at MMA Junkie John. I'm very curious to see what the behind-the-scenes action is going to be like. I know that Abu Dhabi is a dry country, but you can drink in the hotel, so I imagine there's going to be some kind of moonshine brewing factory based out of your room.
Well, I have done a little bit of research, and you can bring 4 liters. You can bring 4 liters of alcohol in with you. So we'll at least start with a 4-liter head start and see where we go from there.
Well, that'll be good, at least throughout, like, you know, media day or something, just to get the party started. We can't wait. And of course, check out the MMA Roadshow for all the behind the scenes action and just good old family fashion fun. So John, we really appreciate the time, man. Good luck on your flights. Good luck being safe. Avoid that COVID-19, and we look forward to your excellent coverage, man. Appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure, guys.